most people, whether they're working in the for-profit or non-profit group, really want their life to be based on the purpose and meaning that they have, based on something that they really care about. And they want to make a contribution to the groups they work with or the groups they lead. And whether that contribution is about leadership or fundraising or board development, information technology, improving their taxes, marketing, that contribution is really based on more than just wanting to make a buck, although obviously that's important. We all need to support ourselves. But they want to make that contribution to support groups. And one of the things I've learned in building groups is you need to build relationships. You need to build relationships with people to form a powerful group. And in order to do that, in order to build those relationships, you really need to inspire other people. You really need to know who you are and develop a story of where what you care about comes from and where your purpose and meaning comes from. So what I'd like to do today is help us develop a story about you. In the center of this little diagram is you. And so this little workshop today is really about you and what drives you, what you care about, and what provides purpose and meaning in your life and in your work. So what I'd like to do briefly is just demonstrate a little. I'm going to share a little story, and my story's not your story. This is a story about me. Your story can look very different. And then I'd like you to, we're going to spend some time thinking about what your story is, the story that gives you purpose and meaning. And we're going to have a chance to stand and deliver this, to get up and do this yourself, because practice is what it's all about. So let me tell you a little story about one of the ways, or one of the bases that I have, one of the reasons for what I care about. My grandfather's name was Israel Jacoby. He died when I was 10 years old. And his wife, my grandmother, Minnie Jacoby, moved into our house. She moved into my room, and my dad fixed up a room for me in the attic. So Minnie was always there while my parents were out working, and so I learned a lot about her life, and I learned a lot about the life of my grandfather, her late husband, Israel Jacoby. Israel Jacoby came to this country when he was 14 years old. He moved here from Poland. And like millions of other immigrants at the time, this was the early 1900s, he worked in a garment factory 6 days a week, 10 hours a day. And he went across the street to Cooper Union, this is in the Lower East Side of New York, and got an engineering degree and graduated in 1920. When he graduated, his name was still Israel Jacoby. It was pretty obviously he was a Jew. He couldn't get a job. Anti-Semitism was very powerful at that time. So he and my grandmother set up a little appetizing store. I don't know if you know what an appetizing store is. I'm getting these quizzical looks. An appetizing store, he sold pickles and herring and candy, and he died pretty young. He worked 364 days a year, except for Yom Kippur, and died when he was younger than I am now. And one of the things my grandmother, Minnie, always told me is how he couldn't get a job even though he had that degree. And I heard this story over and over again. And what it conveyed to me was, here was someone who had all this talent, but he couldn't work. And then I thought of the bridges that didn't get built, and the roads that didn't get built, or the machines that didn't get built because he had this talent, but nobody would hire him. And so one of the things I care about today is providing opportunities for people to use the gifts that God gave them. And if you don't like the God language, whatever your purpose and meaning or gift is, I think all of us have a special gift. And that's really what motivates me. Having heard this story as a little boy growing up, how someone who I liked, I knew my grandfather. I mean, he died when I was 10, so I knew him pretty well. I always loved him. And he never could do that. He never could use what his gifts were. So today, when I see little kids, whether they're picked the wrong place to grow up, or their skin is too dark, or they're living in the wrong neighborhood, a place where they don't have the opportunities I think about my grandfather, Israel Jacoby, and I think I really want to develop groups that can provide the opportunity for everyone so they can use their gifts and can do what God put them on the earth to do. And that's really what gives me purpose and meaning in my work. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to, everyone here okay with breathing? Okay, that's a joke, okay. I'd like you to just take a minute and take a deep breath, okay? I mean, you have to breathe anyway, you might as well take a quick one. And just think about something that you really care about. Something you really care about that motivates you, something that gives you purpose and meaning when you're out there doing the work that you do, whatever it is. And just go to that place. Think of a time when you were really doing what you felt was your gift, doing what God put you on the earth to do, when you were in, whether you call it in flow, whether you call it you were really swinging, whatever you call it, think of a time when you really knew this is who I am. And go to that place and remember where you were and what you were doing. And when you think back, what got you there, think about a story. Your story is going to be your story, obviously, not my story. Could be about your family, could be about a teacher, could be about something you did, could be about a failure, could be about a success, but something that moves you, something that you care about, a story that motivates you. And what I want you to do, take out a piece of paper and just start writing something about that story. And a story might have, generally has a beginning, a middle, something you learned. You heard mine. Doesn't have to be long, doesn't have to be dramatic, but just write something. And what I'm going to ask you to do, after you have that written down, I want you to turn to someone and say it.